A small match rests in a quiet kitchen drawer. It waits beside spoons, rubber bands, and old keys. It looks simple, almost boring. But this tiny stick carries a long and strange past. It holds stories of smoke, danger, hunger, and hope. Every quick flame you see today once came with real fear. The history of matchsticks is darker than most people think. If you still keep a matchbox at home, leave a like. Share this story with someone who uses matches every day, and tell me in the comments what you usually light first: your stove, a candle, or something else. The first spark in a human home did not come from a match. It came from fear, cold, and long nights. Thousands of years ago, people lived in caves or small huts made from wood and mud. When the sun went down, darkness filled every corner. The cold air crept inside. Wild animals moved outside the walls. Fire was not just useful. Fire was life. Early people did not carry fire in their pockets. They carried it in their hearts, and sometimes in a small clay pot. They protected a single flame for days. If it died, they faced a long and hard task. They had to create a new one. They struck stones together. They rubbed dry sticks until their hands burned. Sometimes it worked. Many times it did not. In ancient China, around 2,000 years ago, people made something close to the first match. It was not the small match we know today. It was a thin wooden stick with a little sulfur at the tip. Sulfur is a yellow material that burns easily. People dipped the stick into fire to light it. Then they used it to carry the flame from place to place. These early sticks did not create fire. They only carried it. But even that was a big step. A cook could light a stove faster. A guard could light a torch at night. A mother could warm food for her child without long struggle. Life became a little softer, a little kinder. In some old Chinese stories, servants carried these sticks in small boxes. They were always ready to bring fire to their masters. The sticks were called fire-inch sticks. They were simple, but they changed daily life. People began to think of fire as something small and portable, not just a wild force from the sky. In ancient Rome, people also tried to control fire in small ways. They used oil lamps and candles made from animal fat, but lighting them was still hard. A man might spend 10 minutes just to light a lamp. If the weather was wet, it could take even longer. Many homes smelled of smoke. Many people burned their fingers or their clothes. Think about a cold night in a Roman house. The wind moves through the wooden door. A father tries to light a candle. He strikes flint, a hard stone, against steel. Sparks jump into the air. Most of them die at once. Only one or two touch the dry grass. The grass starts to glow, not burn. He blows softly. At last, a small flame appears. It feels like a tiny miracle. This was the normal way of life for thousands of years. Fire was slow. Fire was uncertain. Fire was dangerous. And still, people needed it every single day. In medieval Europe, life did not change much in this way. Houses were made of wood. Roofs were dry straw. One mistake with fire could destroy a whole village. People kept a single fire burning in the centre of the home. It stayed alive day and night. If it died, they borrowed fire from a neighbour. Fire was a shared thing, almost like bread. Some towns had a town fire, whereas it burned in a public place. If someone lost their flame, they walked there with a small torch. They lit it and carried it back home. In a way, the whole town shared one heart of fire. But this system had a problem. If a big rain came or a strong wind, the fire could die. Then everyone suffered. People felt real fear at such times. Cold kitchens, dark rooms, empty stoves. In the 1600s, people in Europe began to look for easier ways to make fire. They used something called a tinderbox. A tinderbox was a small metal box. Inside it there was flint, steel, and dry material called tinder. Tinder was something that caught sparks easily. It could be dry grass, cloth, or fungus from trees. A person carried this box everywhere. If they needed fire, they opened it. They struck the flint and steel together. Sparks flew into the tinder. The tinder began to glow. Then they blew on it. Slowly it became a flame. This method worked. But it was not fast. It was not safe. Many people burned their hands. Some started house fires by accident. And still, this was the best tool they had. In cold countries, lighting a morning fire could take a long time. A woman might wake up before sunrise. She sat near the cold stove. She struck flint again and again. Her fingers felt stiff from the cold. The sparks died. The tinder refused to glow. The children waited, hungry and silent. There is a quiet sadness in that image. A small family, a cold room, a mother trying to create a tiny flame, just to warm some soup, just to make the day feel normal. And I think this shows something gentle about people. We do not only chase big dreams. Often, we just want a little warmth, a small light in the dark, a simple fire to cook our food. These small needs shape history more than kings and battles. In the 1700s, scientists began to study fire in new ways. They looked at chemicals. Chemicals are materials that change when they mix or burn. Some of these chemicals could create heat very fast. This gave people a new idea. Maybe fire did not need flint and steel. Maybe it could come from a small chemical reaction. In 1680, a man named Robert Boyle, a famous scientist, played with this idea. He covered paper with phosphorus. Phosphorus is a white material that glows and burns easily. Then he rubbed a piece of wood covered with sulfur against it. The wood burst into flame. It was something close to a match, but it was not safe. Phosphorus was very dangerous. It could burn skin, it could poison people. So this idea stayed inside labs and experiments. It did not enter normal homes. Still, the dream had begun. People wanted a stick that could create fire in one simple move. No boxes, no stones, no long struggle in the cold. In the early 1800s, a French chemist named Jean Chancel made one of the first real matches. These matches had chemicals on the tip. To light them, a person dipped the tip into a small bottle of acid. The acid caused a reaction. The match caught fire. It worked, but it was not practical. People did not want to carry acid in their pockets. The bottles broke. The acid burned clothes and skin. The idea was clever, but daily life needed something simpler. A few years later in England, a man named John Walker made a new type of match. He was a chemist and a drug seller. In his small shop, he mixed chemicals with a wooden stick. One day, the mixture dried on the tip. When he scraped it against the floor, it burst into flame. It surprised him, but he saw the value at once. This stick could make fire without acid, without a box, without a long struggle, just a quick strike on a rough surface. Walker began to sell these matches in his shop. He called them friction lights. Friction means rubbing two things together. People loved the idea, but there was a problem. These early matches were wild and strong. When they lit, they sometimes exploded into big flames. They sent hot sparks in every direction. They smelled terrible. The smoke was thick and harsh. Lighting a match felt like lighting a tiny firework. Still, people bought them. The dream of easy fire was too strong to ignore, and soon, factories began to produce matches in large numbers. This is where the story grows darker, because the tiny stick that brought light into homes also brought pain into the lives of the workers who made them. The match factories of the 1800s were not quiet or gentle places. They were loud, hot, and full of strange smells. Long wooden tables stood in rows. Young workers, many of them children, sat shoulder to shoulder. They dipped matchsticks into bowls of chemicals. They worked for long hours, sometimes 12 hours a day, sometimes even more. The air inside these factories was heavy. It carried the sharp smell of phosphorus. This chemical made matches light quickly, but it also harmed the human body. Workers breathed it in every day. They did not know how dangerous it was. They only knew they needed the job. Many of them were very poor. Some were orphans. Some were young girls who had no other work. At first, the danger was invisible. People felt tired. Their teeth began to ache. Their gums swelled. Then something worse happened. The bones in their faces started to rot. Rot means to slowly decay and fall apart. The disease became known as phossy jaw. The name sounded strange, almost playful, but the reality was deeply sad. Workers with phossy jaw felt constant pain. Their faces swelled. Their teeth fell out. In some cases, parts of the jawbone turned black and died. Doctors sometimes had to cut away pieces of the bone. Imagine living with such pain just to make small sticks of fire for other people's kitchens. Many factory owners knew about the danger, but they did not want to spend money on safer materials. Cheap matches brought quick profit. Workers were easy to replace. If one became sick, another poor child waited outside the gate. There is a quiet cruelty in this part of the story. The match, a symbol of warmth and light, was built on real suffering. Behind every small flame there was a room full of tired hands and tired eyes. In London, in the year 1888, a group of young women worked at the Bryant and May match factory. Most of them were teenagers. They dipped matches all day. Their fingers stayed yellow from chemicals. Their wages were very low. Sometimes they were fined for small mistakes. A fine means money taken away as punishment. One day, the factory fired a worker. The reason was small and unfair. The other girls became angry. They decided to stop working. They walked out together. This was a strike. A strike means workers refuse to work to demand better conditions. It was a brave act. These girls were poor. They had little power, but they stood together. Newspapers began to write about them. People in the city felt sympathy. Sympathy means feeling the pain of others. Soon the strike became famous. The factory owners felt pressure. They agreed to some changes. Wages improved. Fines were reduced. The story of these match girls spread across the country. It showed that even small, quiet workers could stand up for themselves. And I think this is one of the most hopeful parts of human history. Change often begins in small rooms, not grand halls. It begins with tired people who say, "This is not fair anymore." Around this time, scientists searched for safer materials. They wanted a match that would not poison workers. They also wanted a match that would not explode or send sparks everywhere. In Sweden, a new idea appeared. Instead of putting dangerous chemicals on the match tip, they placed some of them on the side of the matchbox. This created the safety match. The match would only light when rubbed against the special surface on the box. This made it safer to carry and safer to produce. The key change was the use of red phosphorus. Red phosphorus was much less dangerous than the white form. Workers could handle it with less risk. Slowly, countries began to ban the old dangerous matches. Factories changed their methods. Life in match factories improved. The air became cleaner. The hours grew shorter. Children slowly disappeared from the production lines. Not everywhere at once. But the change had started. By the early 1900s, safety matches spread across Europe and beyond. They came in small cardboard boxes. Each box held dozens of thin wooden sticks. People kept them in kitchens, pockets, and coat sleeves. Fire became something almost casual. A person could create a flame in 1 second. This small change affected daily life in quiet ways. People could cook faster. They could light candles during storms. They could start fires in cold cabins without long struggle. The morning routine became easier. The evening became warmer. In many homes, a matchbox became a common object. It sat near the stove or on a small shelf. It was not special. It was just part of life. But inside that small box lived a long story of science, danger, courage, and change. In the early days of the 20th century, soldiers carried matches into war. A single match could light a small fire in a trench. It could warm a cup of tea. It could give a moment of comfort in a terrible place. For many soldiers, that tiny flame felt like a small piece of home. Later, as electricity spread, people needed matches less for light. Homes began to use electric lamps. Streets filled with electric lights. Cities glowed at night. But matches did not disappear. They found new roles. People used them to light gas stoves. They used them for candles on birthdays. They used them during power cuts. Campers carried them into forests. Travellers packed them in their bags. In the middle of the 20th century, another small change appeared. The disposable lighter. It was made of plastic and metal. It produced flame with a quick flick of the thumb. It did not smell like matches. It did not leave a burned stick behind. Many people moved to lighters. They were fast and easy, but matches stayed in the world. They felt simple, natural, honest. A match did not hide its flame. You could see it grow from the wood. In restaurants, waiters still carried matchboxes. Some had the name of the restaurant printed on them. People collected these boxes. They became small souvenirs. Souvenirs are objects that help you remember a place or moment. Even today, in many parts of the world, matches remain common. They're cheap, they're easy to store, They work without gas or battery. A small box can last for months. And still, very few people think about their history. They strike a match. A flame appears. Then it is gone. The story behind it stays hidden. But that story is not only about chemicals or factories. It is about the human wish for warmth, must, light, and comfort. It is about tired workers who stood together. It is about scientists who searched for safer ways. It is about small changes that made daily life easier. And as the modern world grew brighter with electricity and machines, the humble match quietly stepped into a new role, waiting in drawers and pockets, ready for the next small moment when someone would need a flame. In the late 20th century, many homes began to change. Kitchens filled with electric stoves, heaters worked with buttons instead of flames. Some children grew up without ever using a match. Fire became something distant. It lived inside wires, hidden in metal boxes on the wall. Yet the match never truly disappeared. It stayed in the back of drawers. It waited in small boxes near the stove. It rested in camping bags and emergency kits. It became a quiet object. Not used every day, but always ready. In small villages, especially in poorer parts of the world, matches still played a big role. A mother lit a cooking fire each morning. A shop owner used a match to start a small stove for tea. A farmer lit dry grass at the edge of a field. The match remained part of daily life, just as it had been for centuries. In some countries, match factories still run. But they are very different from the dark factories of the 1800s. Workers now use safer chemicals. The air is cleaner. Machines do much of the work. People no longer sit for 12 hours with yellow fingers and sore jaws. The small stick of fire has become kinder to the hands that create it. Still, the memory of the old days has not vanished. Here in Sweden, there is a small museum about matches. Old boxes sit behind glass. Some are decorated with bright pictures. Others are plain and simple. Visitors walk slowly from one case to another. They see the early friction matches. They see the first safety matches. They see the faces of workers from long ago. Some of those photos show young girls with serious eyes. Their faces are calm, but there is a quiet sadness there. They look much older than their years. When you see those faces, it becomes hard to think of a match as only a simple tool. It becomes a small piece of human history. Dear listener, think about the last time you lit a match. Maybe it was for a candle, maybe for a stove, maybe during a power cut. The flame probably lasted only a few seconds. You struck the stick. It flared bright. Then you shook it gently and the light died. That moment felt small, almost nothing. But behind it stood thousands of years of human effort, from ancient Chinese sulfur sticks to Roman sparks, from cold medieval mornings to crowded factories, from the pain of phossy jaw to the courage of match girls who walked out of their jobs. There is something quiet and humbling in that thought. A match burns for only a few seconds, but its history burns for centuries. Today, many people choose electric lighters or induction stoves. Some even forget where their matchbox is. But matches still hold a strange beauty. They are simple wood, a little chemical at the tip, nothing more, and still they carry fire in a calm, patient way. I think this is one of the most touching parts of human life. We take great ideas and turn them into small, gentle tools. We turn wildfire into a quiet flame on a tiny stick. We turn danger into comfort. We turn long struggle into one small, easy movement of the hand. A match also teaches something about time. It burns quickly. It cannot be saved. Once it lights, its life is short. It gives everything in that brief moment. Warmth, light, heat. Then it becomes a small piece of black wood. There is a quiet lesson there. Some things are meant to be brief. A candle on a birthday cake, a small fire on a winter night, a match that burns just long enough to start something new. Next time you open a drawer and see a matchbox, you may pause for a second. You may remember the cold kitchens of the past, the young workers in crowded factories, the small hands that dipped thousands of sticks into chemicals, the brave girls who walked out together into the streets of London. You may look at that tiny stick of wood and see more than just a tool. You may see a long chain of human effort, pain, hope, and quiet improvement. All of it resting in your hand, waiting for one small spark. And when the flame appears, even for a moment, it may feel a little warmer than before. Not just because of the fire, but because of the story that lives inside it.